यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतम् मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यभिमः योगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ. So yesterday we reached to the point where we discussed that Upanishad is a means of knowledge for gaining self-knowledge, and the word Upanishad is derived. The meaning of the word Upanishad is derived from the word itself. Upani and Sat, there are three components, and that those components, if you really each component, if you analyze or if you know, well, it amounts to the self-knowledge and the purpose of self-knowledge, of course. Well, it destroys the ignorance, etc. All these things we have seen. From there, the idea came that, well, Upanishad is a means of knowledge for self. Then what are the other means of knowledge available to the human being? We should know very clearly. And so we'll discuss a little bit part of this means of knowledge. In Sanskritam they call pramanam. It has been formed from the root ma. Ma means to know. From that manam. Manam is means of knowledge basically. Manam is a means of knowledge. From there even the word matra. Miyate anene iti matra. So matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkhadaha. Matra sparshaha. So it's the sense organs. Right? They are called matra because they measure. They measure. So ma means to measure, to know, measuring in terms of knowing only. So ma dhatu is basically a basic root. And this matra means you measure the world. Every sense organ measures the world. So this sense organ measures the world in terms of form. This sense organ, basically the organ of hearing, measured the world in form of sound. Because world has many things. World has a touch, world has a sound, world has a form, world has a taste. All the objects, right? So out of all kinds of objects, a particular sense organ measure in a certain way. And that's how we call it as a matra. Anyway, so pramanam basically. So basically, pramanam means a means of knowledge. Manam also is a means of knowledge, but when you put pra as a suffix, as a prefix, then nakara turns to nakara. That's a rule in Panini. Anyway, so pramanam means a means of knowledge. Pramata, a knower, one who employs the means of knowledge. And then prama means the knowledge, the result. Pramanam, pramata, and prama means knowledge. And the fourth thing is that prameya, the object of knowledge. A sound is an object of knowledge for an organ of hearing, etc. like that. So these four things are there, of course. So we are right now discussing what are the means of knowledge, pramanam, available for a human being. And the definition of pramanam has been given in the Shastra as anadigatam, abaditam, arthavat, bodhakam, pramanam. Anadigatam. Anadigatam means na adigatam, anadigatam. Adigatam, known. Anadigatam, not known. Means pramanam is one. A means of knowledge is one by which what you know cannot be known by other means of knowledge. That's all it is. So every sense, every means of knowledge should give you a data, or the subject matter of every means of knowledge should be such, well, that subject matter should not be available for other means of knowledge. A unique means of knowledge. Unique subject matter for every means of knowledge. And that is how we have a counting. This counting is very important, in fact. 1 minute. So this counting is very, very important. In fact, all the Astika Darshanas and Nastika Darshanas, the philosophy is based on this counting of means of knowledge. I will talk to you. Anyway, so very first means of knowledge, which is direct, which is moolam, which is the basis for all means of knowledge, other means of knowledge, is pratyaksham. Pratyaksham means a perception. And definitely we count these sense organs backed by the mind as a separate means of knowledge, because which is achieved by them cannot be achieved by other means of knowledge. The perception, the sense organs, and backed by the mind. Mind should be there. So they generally define this pratyaksham as a Vishaya Indriya Sannikarsha Janya Jnanam Pratyaksham. Vishaya, Indriya, the object, sense object, and sense organ. When Sannikarsham, when they come in contact, what knowledge which is generated is called pratyaksham, perception. Which is, of course, this is a sense perception, sensory perception, but this is the thing. Anyway, so, and that the subject matter of this means of knowledge is unique. All the sense objects is the subject matter, or well, they are the Vishayas for this, senses. Anyway, and so perception, pratyaksha, of course, it is fivefold anyway, is counted as a one means of knowledge, because what you can know through the perception, what you can know through the sense organs backed by mind, is not available to other means of knowledge. So we'll see that. But this is anadigatam, abaditam. It cannot be negated also, etc., etc. And very, very useful, very useful. The perception is not there. Suppose eyes is not there. Well, you need another one person. If I don't have eyes, I require another human being, full human being. Well, without that I cannot function properly. If I don't have an organ of hearing, and thereby I don't gain a knowledge of sound, well, lot of things I lose. I lose the joy of music or any other thing. Many things. So basically arthavat. Arthavat means it is purposeful. Artha means a purpose. Prayojanam. Vat means it possesses. So possessor of a prayojanam means it has a prayojanam. So pramanam means anadigatam. The subject matter of a particular means of knowledge should not be available to another means of knowledge. One. Abaditam. That means of knowledge, whatever the knowledge is generated, or the subject matter, well, cannot be negated by another means of knowledge. So that is also there. Abaditam means the subject matter which is the subject matter of the one means of knowledge should not be negated by another means of knowledge. Cannot negate. In fact, if it cannot be known by other means of knowledge, then how can it negate? To negate or to contradict, it should become a subject matter for other means of knowledge, and therefore definitely it cannot negate. So anadigatam abaditam. Then the third is arthavat. Whatever the subject matter is there, whatever the knowledge is there generated by this means of knowledge should be useful to the human being. And it is useful, definitely. And so arthavat bodhakam pramanam, such a with which has a certain purpose. And so the knowledge which is bodhakam, so the means of knowledge which generates this is called pramanam, in our definition. Anadigatam, abaditam, arthavat bodhakam, which gives you knowledge, which makes you know, should be purposeful, should not be available to other means of knowledge, and should not be negated by another means of knowledge. Well, then we give a status as a pramana. And so perception basically, pratyaksham is a mula pramanam, which is fivefold and is counted as a one means of knowledge, the very first. And this is fivefold because, within the perception itself, we see each sense organs, of course, having its own sphere. And therefore, what is known through the eyes, even in perception we have fivefold. And each one works as a pramanam. In pratyaksha is a mula pramanam, in that also it is fivefold. So the eyes is again independent pramanam. Well, it gives a knowledge of form, cannot be contradicted by the ears. Could you follow? And therefore, again the definition of pramanam you can apply even within perception to the five sense organs. Anadigatam, abaditam, arthavat, bodhakam, pramanam. And therefore, eyes have access to colors and ears have access to sound, and the skin has, the organ of touch basically has a access to the touch, etc. And therefore, it cannot be negated by another means of knowledge also. It is only available to that. So every sense organ in its own sphere, own subject matter, let's say that way. And therefore, it is anadigatam, abaditam. So this is fivefold. So that is how we count, of course, each sense organ as a independent pramanam, distinct pramanam, means of knowledge. And what they generate is called prama. And their object of knowledge is called prameya. So the sound is called prameya. The shabda is a prameya. Knowledge of sound is called prama. And this organ of hearing is called pramanam. And I, the knower, is called pramata. Knower of the sound is called pramata. This is how these fourfold things are there in a given piece of knowledge. All the four factors are there. So five sense organs, objectify the world directly. And so we call them pratyaksha pramanam. Collectively we of course call pratyaksha pramanam direct means of knowledge. This is the only means of knowledge which gives you the knowledge directly. Direct. And that is why it is considered very important. Direct means of knowledge. In fact, that becomes an evidence even in the courts, right? So witness, call the witness who has seen the incident. Call the witness who has seen, who has heard something, whatever. So that is since it is a direct means of knowledge, and generates a direct knowledge, of course, we call it as a mula pramana, the sources of all means of knowledge. And in fact, it affects even the Veda also that way. Affects means, it has an entry even in the Veda. Of course, Veda is a very independent means of knowledge. We are going to see that. People come quite late. Anyway, so Veda is a means of knowledge that is outside the perception. Perception available, the senses available to the human being, to the Purusha. And so whatever knowledge generated by the senses given to the Purusha, that knowledge is called Paurusheya Jnana. Right? Paurusheya, Purusha Sambandhi Jnana, means the perception is available through the senses. And therefore, of course, it is a Paurusheya Jnana. And then the knowledge, of course, in the Veda is Apaurusheya. Never available for the human being, for the senses. You cannot see Devatas, you cannot see Atma, you cannot see Punya Papam, nothing. The whole subject matter of the Veda, the sphere of the Veda, of course, is is available only through Veda. So Veda is an independent Praman compared to this Pratyaksha, which is available for the senses to the human being. And therefore human being has no access in the knowledge of Veda. I mean, independently cannot arrive through Veda. Of course, one knows it's a different thing. But even such a Veda, which is which gives us a knowledge which is outside the perception. But then the words of Veda you will have to hear, right? And therefore the perception has access there. So you gain the Vedic knowledge, but again you need perception. The words of Veda you have to hear, which talks about Punya Papa, which talks about Atma, etc. We are doing Shravanam, right? Shravana manah shrotavyaha mantavyaha atmavare drashtavyaha shrotavyaha mantavyaha nididhyasitavyaha. So you have to listen to Atma. I mean, you have to listen to, I'm a teacher who talks about Atma through Upanishad, etc. So Shravanam, so perception has an access. Or you read basically the words of Upanishad, etc. or words of the Veda, etc. And so you have you have to see it. So, I mean, if you are denied of a visual or a auditory perception, suppose anyone is denied because he has a defect in the eyes or defect in the ears, etc., then he cannot gain the knowledge of Veda. So, perception is very, very important. Even though Veda is an independent body of knowledge, when the subject matter of it is never have an access to the human being directly. Directly means he cannot arrive, what is the subject matter of the Veda cannot be arrived by the human being through the senses, etc. Still, definitely perception is very important even in gaining Vedic knowledge. So the Pratyaksha Pramana is ultimately a very important means in gaining our knowledge, and the other means of knowledge, depend upon Pratyaksha Pramana. We call it as a indirect knowledge, indirect means of perception also. Now, as I told you, the counting of this Pramana is very, very important. In as much as, people, the philosophers who believe only Pratyaksha as a Pramana, perception only as a means of knowledge, or they say, basically, other than Pratyaksha, nothing is true. Suppose somebody say, anything sensorily perceived is true and everything else is untrue. Suppose some says that. Then they have one kind of a philosophy. They don't believe other than what is available to the senses. And then their philosophy would be different. And we call them such philosophy as a Charvaka's philosophy. And of course, Brihaspati is their expounder of this philosophy. And then Nayayikas, these logicians, they believe only in two pramanams, two means of knowledge, Pratyaksha and the inference based on Pratyaksha. So perception is a pramanam, and after that the other means of knowledge is Anumanam. So that's how. So counting is very, very important. Vedantins believe in 6 pramanams, 6, and we are discussing that one by one. So we are right now discussing the Pratyaksha. Now this Pratyaksha itself is of two types. It can take, the perception can take place with sense organs, perception can take place without sense organs. Depending upon that, we have two types of Pratyaksha, two types of perceptions. Now perception with the help of a sense organ is qualified as Indriya Pratyaksha, sensory perception, direct sensory perception. And perception that takes place without the help of sense organ is called Sakshi Pratyaksha, witness perception. In this perception, witness means knower, basically. Witness, whenever any knowledge takes place, it automatically implies a knower. So witness, Whenever an object of knowledge is there, the witness, the Atma, of course, takes a role of a knower. So from the witness alone, the knower arises. From witness, everything arises. From Atma, everything arises. Anyway, but right now let's talk about that, because witness has come, so it will create a doubt again. Witness knows means what? A witness knows as a knower. Therefore, knower should be there. But definitely the knower, basically the pramada, which has arisen, a knower must be what? By nature, knowledge. That is witness. Anyway, so the witness as a knower perceived directly without taking the help of senses, then we call it as a witness perception. And there are so many things. Like the world which is outside, where has sound and taste and touch and everything. Well, you need, of course, knower is there, witness is there, but then you need the senses. Through the senses, you will know the outer world. So this is then we call it as a sensory perception. And if the senses are not there, yet witness knows as a knower. What are the things you know? Well, so many things. Hunger, thirst, right? And then time, space, all these things. Time, of course, means time, you know the clock, you see the clock. Well, that is a form. But basically, a flow of time is known to you, right? Without senses, basically. So that is, witness perception. A knowledge of time is called witness perception. Even the space also. Like you say me that, Swamiji, this is a clip in the room. Clip in a room. Correct. Clip is known through the eye because it has a form, color, etc. But how do you know the room, the space? How do you know? Space is not available for senses because space does not have a form, space does not have a color. Then therefore it cannot be picked up by the eyes, etc. And therefore, even the special situation which we are talking, then definitely that is through the witness. Basically, time and space. What I want to convey is time and space are witness perception. Time and space is known through witness perception. Anyway, this is how, and other things which I have told you in the outer world. So the whole creation is basically time, space and other objects. Well, ultimately, time and space is witness perception, and other objects in the outer world, please understand that it is available through the senses. And then hunger, thirst, your emotions, all our emotions are known to you. As a knower, they are all known to you through witness perception. So what is sensorily perceived? Well, definitely needs sense organ, and mere sakshi, well, cannot perceive. Through sakshi, of course, it is there. In sensory perception also, the sakshi is there as a knower. And in witness perception also, sakshi is there as a knower. So sakshi is all the time there. Knower must be there. Without knower, how can the knowledge takes place? But sakshi or a knower plus sense organs, then sensory perception. Minus sense organ, knower or a sakshi which has become a knower, knows directly without senses, witness perception. This is how we have to understand. And a particular sense organ is absent, then other sense organ is there, well, still the witness is there, right? One sense organ you are not operating. Right now you are listening to me, suppose. Then you are employing a organ of hearing, or you are seeing me. Then at that time you are employing a eyes. But so one organ one sense organ may be present, other may be absent, definitely. But then sakshi will be there all the time in all sensory perception. Different fivefold sensory perceptions are there. In each one, the sakshi is all the time present. The sense organ may be absent in, it is absent in when you are seeing something, well, other things are suspended. Other senses are suspended for time being. Anyway, and in absence of all the sense organs also, sakshi continues to be there. Now please tell me, Swamiji, if the Sakshi continues to be there, means say he is a knower or not? Well, he could be a knower, he could not be a knower. If all senses are absent, then sensory perception is absent, definitely. But suppose he is thinking something, or he particular emotion has arisen in his mind and he is knowing it, then definitely still the perception continues. Then still the Sakshi as a knower is present. Even witness perception also stops. No emotion, no hunger, thirst, and no the sense organs are also absent, and then the status of a Sakshi as a knower has gone, because no object of knowledge, right? And therefore Sakshi continues. This is just by the way. You know everything, but I am just reminding you the Sakshi is there behind everything. Whether a senses are there or not, whether even the emotions, etc., mind, etc., is present or not. Anyway, all they are resolved. Sakshi continues. If any of them is present, then definitely Sakshi becomes a knower and knows the thing. Anyway, so the perception is of twofold: sensory perception and witness perception. And the subject matter is different. Please understand that. Subject matter is different. Here the subject matter is space, time and emotions and other things. Hunger, thirst, etc. Or pain in the body. Well, that's also. And don't think that pain of the body is through touch. No. Pain of the body is known directly to the witness perception. Like pain, stomach pain is all directly known. And therefore, that is not through senses. And then, of course, touch, smell, etc., all the objects of touch and smell and all that through the senses. So we have two types of perceptions, and each has its own subject matter. Now, in our day-to-day life, of course, more than this pratyaksham, more than this perception, we employ few more pramanas, and they are very, very important. The first among them, other than the pratyaksham, well, is anuman. We have to understand this very well. We have this, you see, these all have basically, more than us, other philosophers, other system of philosophy, they have they have done a good work on how pramana functions, etc. What are the things involved in a particular means of knowledge? Everything they have worked out. We just borrow from them. And this anumana is one thing which is to be understood properly. Anyway, so pratyaksha, of course, perception is give you a direct knowledge that is there. Now, whatever we are going to talk, well, they give you indirect knowledge. Whatever the means of knowledge we are going to talk about will give you indirect knowledge, etc. And the first one in that is anuman, inference. Well, it is a means of knowledge by which something is inferred through reasoning. So in perception, there is no reasoning. I am seeing you right now. No reasoning. I am hearing you. No reasoning. I am hearing a sound of a machine. No reasoning. Hearing a sound of a bird. No reasoning. Etc. But then, definitely some reasoning involved in other things. Like, well, when you hear a sound, like, suppose you are hearing me. At the same time, you are hearing a sound of a car. So, hearing the sound, perception. But it is a sound of a car is not pratyaksham. How will you know? Because the car is not pratyaksham to you. You are not seeing the car. You are hearing a sound is all right. That is direct. Through your senses. Through your organ of hearing, basically. But it is your conclusion that it is a sound of a car. There must be a car in the vicinity of Swamiji's room, etc. How will you know? It's a conclusion. Because you are not seeing a car at all. And therefore, definitely more than perception is there in this conclusion. that it is a sound of a car, that knowledge is generated in your mind, not merely by perception. Because perception means you should see the car, right? And which is moving, but you are not seeing. Yet you have got knowledge that there is a car in the vicinity of, or there is a car in the ashram, etc. That knowledge is generated, that conclusion is generated in your mind. Well, definitely more than perception is involved. And you have employed a reasoning. Perception of a sound is there, but then you have employed a reasoning by which, well, by which you have come to the conclusion that it is a sound of a car. So perception gives a certain data of a sound, of course, based upon which you use your reasoning and come to know something else, that it is a sound of a car, etc. And I will give you another example, which by it's a stock example is, very well, smoke and fire. Now I will take that example so you will understand that. Suppose you see a smoke in the forest, and smoke and the forest are directly seen to you, especially here. Here there is a lot of forest. So if right now it has become a forest. In winter when I came, I was thinking whether this would be a forest or what, but now it's all covered with the trees and bushes and so much. So my point is, the forest and the smoke are available for direct perception. And then, well, there is no reasoning, because I am seeing a forest, I am seeing a smoke also. But so there is no reasoning involved. But then, so you should say what? Well, forest has a smoke. But you don't say that. This much is available for perception. But you go ahead. What? Forest has a fire. Fire you are not seeing, because it is somewhere very deep in the forest. But you are seeing the smoke which is coming out, right? Emerging from the forest. And therefore, forest has a smoke available for perception, because seeing the forest, seeing the smoke. But your conclusion, forest has a fire, definitely between the perception of the forest and the smoke, and your conclusion that the forest has a fire, between there your mind has become active and it has employed some reasoning by which it has got the conclusion that the forest has a fire. And that reasoning is called anumanam, inference. Inference of what? Inference of fire. How will you say inference of fire is there? You have concluded. What is my conclusion? What is my conclusion? Forest has a fire. Oh, forest has a fire? Yeah, that's my conclusion. Yeah, conclusion. What is your perception? Forest has a smoke. Forest has a smoke. So your knowledge does not end there. That's just a perception. But your knowledge has gone one step further. Forest has a fire, and the fire is not perceptible to you. Well, then we would say between the perception of the forest, which has a smoke, and the conclusion that the forest has a fire, there is a mind has become active. It does some reasoning, and well, that is called anumanam. It's another means of knowledge available to the human being based on perception. Of course, you should see a forest, you should see smoke. Based on that, you have the another means of knowledge has become active now, and there is a reasoning involved, and now you have got a new knowledge, new piece of knowledge. And your conclusion, what? Forest has a fire. Very important for the people who are living here, because people who take walk in the forest, suppose, they should know if there is a smoke itself and the conclusion is this, forest has a fire, you will avoid to go in the forest, right? Very important, because this is, forest fire. We are Vedantins are very, very acquainted with this fire, forest fire, because our samsara is also called a forest fire. Davanalaha. In Vivek Chudamani, this, when the Shishya goes to the teacher and he has to present his case properly, then only he will be benefited. And so he is telling that I am really getting, affected in this forest fire called Samsara Davanala. And why? Because this is very, very dangerous, very dangerous. Even though I am taking a walk here and I see the smoke 3 kilometers away, and so I can imagine that the fire is there, but it doesn't take time to come up to this point, right? And therefore this is very important. Why are you calling, why are you talking like this? Yeah, because the definition of pramana is this, arthavat, which should have a purpose. Any means of knowledge should serve a purpose. By providing you certain data, it should be useful to you, and definitely it is useful, so that I can avoid to go. Anyway, so in our stock example, now let's do further analysis in this Anumanam. We have to know how this mind has worked, what has gone inside, so that I have concluded forest is a fire. Now that step between the perception of the smoke in the forest and the conclusion that there is a fire, though that step has a certain criteria in that reasoning, because I could very well tell the forest has deers. I can conclude forest has a smoke, and therefore forest has deers, forest has a bears. I can conclude, and it is a fact. But I don't conclude like that. Seeing the smoke, right? It's a perception. Seeing the smoke, I don't conclude like this. What? Forest has a bears or forest has a deers. Why? Because the smoke and fire has some relationship, and therefore seeing the smoke, I conclude only fire and nothing else. And that is called Vyaptihi. Vyaptihi means invariable connection. Between what? Invariable connection between smoke and the fire. Invariable connection is there, and that connection is established in me. Through what? That I will talk later. But first let us understand that the step which is involved in doing the reasoning, doing the inference, the very first step is, well, from the perception, you definitely infer by employing this invariable relationship. You are seeing the smoke in the forest and concluding it as a fire because there is an invariable relationship between the two, which you are aware of. So, yatra yatra dhumaha, tatra tatra vannihi. This is called invariable concomitance, they call, but let's forget that word because sometimes we don't know. Invariable connection, that's better. So definitely, when I conclude that forest is a fire, definitely when I see a smoke, if I conclude like that, then there is invariable connection between the smoke and the fire. Invariable co-presence also you can call. Suppose it is not so. Suppose there is a smoke without fire. Please understand what I am saying. Please understand. Suppose there is a smoke without fire. I am not saying suppose there is a fire without smoke. Well, that you may find 1,000 places. Fire without smoke. I am not talking that. I am talking differently. Suppose there is a smoke without fire. Suppose you have found it some place like that. Then definitely you will not conclude. What? What is my conclusion? Forest has fire. You will not conclude. Even though you see the smoke. You are seeing, you are perceiving through your eyes smoke. But still you will not conclude because you have seen the smoke earlier. And at few places without fire. You have seen the smoke. Then you will not conclude. But in your mind, immediate conclusion comes. Seeing the smoke, immediate conclusion comes. What? Of fire. Forest is a fire. That's the conclusion. Forest is a fire. That conclusion comes because you are sure. Yatra yatra dhumaha tatra tatra vannihi. Wherever there is a smoke, there must be a fire. Anyway, the smoke cannot be without the fire. So whenever there is a smoke, there is a fire. That vyapti is there in that step between the perception and conclusion. Perception of the smoke and the conclusion of a fire. Well, whatever the mind does reasoning, in that the one thing is this conclusion is this vyapti, this invariable relationship you are aware of between smoke and fire. Whatever the invariable relationship is there, you are aware of. So sometime it happens that the smoke has arisen. You will see a cloud of smoke. Then you don't infer that there is a fire. What is this? Yeah, sometime fire has stopped. Then the smoke also stops. Smoke won't be there. But then smoke has already arisen and makes a cloud-like thing. So if you see a cloud of a smoke, you won't infer that right now there is a fire in the forest. Definitely not. You will say that there must have been a fire before. But if you see not a cloud of smoke, but it is emerging from the forest, then definitely you will feel, you conclude that there is a fire right now in the forest. Now second thing, fire can be present without producing smoke, right? That also you know very well. But smoke cannot be present without the presence of fire. This invariable connection between the smoke and fire is known from our daily perception. But Swamiji, how we have concluded like this? Yatra yatra dhumaha tatra tatra vannihi. Wherever there is a smoke, there is a fire. That kind of a vyapti, that kind of a invariable connection is from what? Is from illustration. Because at a few places you have seen. So they give an example. You have seen in the kitchen. You have seen in the yagashala. You have seen in the crematorium. You have seen in the cities, in some factory, some the accident, fire accident. All this become illustration to arrive a invariable relationship between the smoke and the fire. You have seen in your kitchen, not in the United States, sir, definitely not. But I am talking in India, where still people cook on open fire, etc. And therefore, there definitely, especially in the monsoon, etc., there will be invariably smoke. The fire will be there, but then, more smoke will be there. In fact, from there itself, Bhagavan gave an example. Dhumena vriyate vannihi, yathadarsho balena cha, etc., etc., in 3rd chapter. Dhumena avriyate vannihi. This fire is clouded, covered by smoke. Dhumena. Anyway, so this invariable relationship to arrive at this invariable relationship, to arrive at the vyapti, if I put a technical word, to arrive at the vyapti, the drashtanta are very much there. Drashtantas, illustrations are so many places. Your kitchen, crematorium, yagashala, and the fire accident in the city, etc. So many places. Well, you have seen that a invariable relationship between smoke and fire. So Drashtanta gives you Vyapti, and from Vyapti you will arrive at the conclusion. So please understand, Anumana involves, there are other things, but we will not worry about. But these two are very, very important. Drashtanta and Vyapti. They call Panchavayava Anumanam. So there are other factors, but not too important. But these two we should keep in mind. Well, so definitely an example holds this Vyapti. So if you can show an instance where the invariable nature is contradicted, then your whole Anumana gets falsified. You give me an illustration where the smoke is there, but fire is not there, well, then I cannot conclude like this that forest has a smoke and therefore forest is a fire. I cannot conclude because that very vyapti has been negated. Because you have shown me an example where smoke was there but fire is not there. And therefore, but Swamiji, I will show you the example where smoke is there and fire is not there. What? They give an example. It appears like a smoke, but it is not smoke. Fog. So fog and smoke are not similar things, sir. And therefore, don't give me an example of a fog. A fog is without fire, but smoke is all the time associated with the fire. Anyway, so definitely, this is how reasoning is employed. It's called reasoning. Inference means reasoning. And reasoning has two components. Of course, you all the time you don't think of the illustration. You only go by vyapti. You only go by invariable relationship. So that's a main thing in that step between the perception and the conclusion. Well, and what is perception? Forest has a smoke, perception. What is conclusion? Forest has a fire. And then what is the in between is this vyapti. And that vyapti, of course, has been generated through drashtanta in your life, in your own experience. So this is why anumanam is very accepted as a valid means of knowledge. In scientific research and so many places, in and out daily you also employ. Like I have talked about lakshanas, if you remember Jahal Lakshana and all that. We feel, oh, what a big jargon, Jahal Lakshana and Ajahal Lakshana and Jahal Ajahal Lakshana. And then we found with the illustration, these are all our daily examples. We may not know these terms as such, but we do employ and gain knowledge. Same way this anumanam you keep on doing daily. You see a face of a person and you conclude something. Perception of a face of a person and conclusion is different. Oh, this person is not in mood today. Something must have happened in his office. He on his own, he talks. He talks to himself. He or she, whatever. He or she talks to himself or herself. What? He does not look in a good mood. The Swami something must have happened into him, this Swami, etc. So conclusion is different. Perception is different. Between perception and conclusion, there is a vyapti. What vyapti, Swamiji? What vyapti? Wherever you see a particular kind of a mood, definitely there must be a very unfavorable incident happened. Something like that. Therefore, otherwise the mood will not go, etc. Anyway, so this is very, very important. That's how we avoid. People see the face of other person, check the mood, and then they talk. Very, very important. If you can't employ this means of knowledge, definitely a lot of conflicts would arise. Anyway, in our case, of course, I can stop going to the forest if I could conclude that forest is a fire. Definitely it is useful. Now, this anumana itself is extended further. Then you will get another means of knowledge, and that is called presumption. Very important. In fact, more than inference, this is important. Looks like inference, but it is not inference. It is a little, you can, if you want to call it, we can call it as a elaborate inference, but we can call, if you want to call. Puja Swamiji calls it as a more than one step inference. That's also okay. Inference has a single step. Smoke, fire, right? Single step. But in presumption, more than one step. Fever, COVID-19. No, don't think that way. You don't see COVID-19 virus, right? But you conclude that it is there. How? Not inference, sir. Not inference. It's not single step. A lot of things. Maybe a flu also. Who knows? So more than one steps are involved. All the medical doctors employ this. All our pilots employ this. In all scientific research, it is not merely inference. They carry out an experiment and they have observation. That's a perception. That's correct. But based on the perception or the observation in the experiment, they conclude something. They arrive at a certain law, right? And there are many steps are involved. Many steps are involved. Very important pramanam. This is presumption available to the human being. We could do same antakaranam, same mind. But in the mind there is a vyapti, of course, then inference. Single step. Dhumaha vannihi. Single step. Well, inference. Very important and very useful. But presumption means your mind is more active. Lots of reasoning going on. More than one step also, what Pujya Swamiji says, we can say that way. So more than one step involved. And then the stock example is very nice example. And that is Devadatta is, does not eat during day. You are all the time moving with him and you don't find Devadatta means very Tom, Dick and Harry. Anybody. So here they give name like that. Devadatta and Somadatta and Vishnu Datta and etc. Yagna Datta. Yagnena Datta, Yagna Datta. Devena Datta, Devadatta. They are all prasada. The child is considered as a prasada of a lord. So Devena Datta, given by the Deva, given by the Vishnu, given by the Soma, etc. Anyway, so those days name. I mean, in the Vedic era, this kind of names would have been there. That's what we have to say. So all the time they bring Devadatta. Anyway. So Devadatta, you are moving with your friend called Devadatta and you find him not eating a single, not even a grain. And then of course in night you go to your home and he goes to his home. But during day you both are together all the time and you eat well in the restaurant, but he doesn't eat at all. And then definitely after a few days you feel that he should lose weight. And he has not lost weight. In fact, I feel that he has gained the weight. I could see very well. It's perceptible that this person, his friend, Devadatta, has grown horizontally, and therefore, then you definitely in your mind it is there. If weight gain means the person must be taking food, and that too extra food, of course. Anyway, so eating the food and gaining the weight has a relationship, like our smoke and fire. But this person doesn't eat during day and yet weight the gain. Then what will you say? In your mind this thing will occur. Anyatha anupapatti. What is that? Anyatha means otherwise. Anupapatti. Upapatti means possible, logical. Anupapatti, not possible. So, anyatha anupapatti. Otherwise is not possible. Otherwise it is not possible. Otherwise it is not possible. Means you have two things. What are the two things? Two situations which you have. That Devadatta is not eating during the day. That is one situation. And the second situation is at the same time he is gaining the weight. Now you want to connect these two. How will you connect? Not eating and gaining weight cannot be connected. Correct? Not eating and gaining weight cannot be connected. Eating and gaining weight can be connected easily, like Dhuma and Vanni. But here it cannot be connected. So what you will do is, if the person must be eating during the night. This conclusion is born by connecting these two things, by putting in between what? Otherwise it is not possible. If the person is not eating during the day and he is gaining the weight, would not be possible unless he is eating in the night. And therefore you have arrived at the conclusion he is eating in the night through the pramanam called arthapatti, which is equal to anyatha anupapattihi. Otherwise it is not possible. So gaining weight Swamiji, connect properly. Yeah. Now I am putting. In between I am writing, otherwise it is not possible. Okay. Now in the earlier part of this, we'll write that what the gaining of the weight is not possible if he doesn't eat if he doesn't eat in the night, and therefore your conclusion is he must be eating, but he is gaining the weight, and therefore he must be eating in the night. This is how we have to say. So anyatha anupapatti should be in between, otherwise it is not possible. So gaining of weight is not possible. I mean, then what should be your conclusion? Well, what should be your conclusion? He must be eating in the night. So this also is this is called arthapatti, presumption, and very distinct from inference, which you can understand now. What is arrived by presumption cannot be arrived by inference. This kind of thing is not there. Otherwise not possible. We have not done in inference. We have simply connected Dhuma and Vanni. You see the Dhuma and you connect to Vanni. You conclude that it has a fire. So it's a simple. But here arthapatti means many steps. Fever and COVID-19. Well, it is not that easy. It is not direct connection like Dhuma and Vanni. So you go various steps. Okay, fever is there, but then you will ask other, we'll check for other symptoms. And if you find a particular symptom, well, this symptom, no. Fever and then cold also, he is fevering, he's shivering, etc. Well, we say maybe malaria, etc. But then another thing, then another thing, then another thing. All the possibilities you remove. And then you say, well, fever is there, and therefore other things are not there, and he must be having this kind of fever born of COVID. Don't worry, I'm just giving you a current example. Swami, why are you talking about pandemic? But this is an example, current example I'm telling, where doctors in the hospitals definitely arrive at a particular disease. The conclusion regarding a particular disease is through arthapatti. It is not a simple connection between fever and this kind of a fever born of this virus. So, what is inferentially known, what is known through this presumption is all indirect knowledge, definitely, because you cannot arrive at the presence of virus in his body through perception. So indirect knowledge is as important as direct knowledge. In that our case also, the fire is of course not available in a perception. Still you conclude that it is a fire. So it is the indirect knowledge. The indirect knowledge of fire in inference. Indirect knowledge of a virus present in the body. All this is through this kind of a means of knowledge called inference and presumption. And there are Pujya Swamiji's very favorite example for this presumption is plane lands and takes off, because of this, definitely. And because the pilot is seeing, whatever is there on the instruments, and he concludes that right now the space is available for takeoff. There are no planes, etc. Of course, air traffic controller also helps. But anyway, air traffic controller and even the pilot, all they arrive at a conclusion of either landing or taking off, all based on the data available in there and the cockpit or in that person where he is sitting as the controller, wherever he is sitting. So they are not, perceptually seeing out whether now, okay, no flight is there, now no plane is coming down, and therefore tell this person, okay, you now take off. It's not like that. So it is all like this. And even somebody told me they have a chart, the complete chart. The pilot gets a complete chart of this path in which where cyclone is there, where the turbulence is there, what temperatures are there, all where the clouds are there, where the lightning is there. The complete chart is prepared on ground, and the chart before he takes off is given. Somebody is working and the same person told me like this. So the person prepares the chart, he is not seeing the clouds, everything through perception. He is not seeing lightning, etc. through perception. He prepares all this through the data comes, and well, from there he does this kind of a presumption. These things are there, and therefore, and Puja Swamiji tells also very beautifully. So, in accomplishing anything desirable and avoiding something undesirable, this presumption is very, 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 very important. And therefore, desirable is to take off, or well, not to take off because of certain factors. It's undesirable. We have to avoid it. The pilot has to avoid to take off or to land also. And sometimes they miss, and a disaster can happen. So definitely, is a arthavat. What I want to convey is it is very, very purposeful. You can understand in India it is still with the same symptoms what they have, and they carry out the test, etc., and still they cannot arrive at the COVID-19. It is happening, and by the time you do test again and retest, the disease has spread in the lungs so much, and well, the person has lost his life. I recently came to know. What I want to convey is very important. This kind of inference and presumption are very, very important. If doctor misses a single step, in various steps are then in presumption. If he misses a single step, he may conclude a disease which is wrong, and the treatment would be wrong, etc. And therefore, if you want to avoid something undesirable, of course, you need this knowledge. You should have indirect knowledge generated through presumption or even inference. So that's how the definition of pramana can be employed even in this case also. Arthavat bodhakam pramanam, which will make you known, but which is very purposeful, which is useful to the human being. Then only it has a status of a pramana. It has a status of a means of knowledge. Anyway, and then other pramanas are there, upamanam and anupalabdhi and shabda. That is the words of Veda, etc. we'll talk about tomorrow. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.